She was a natural-born performer. By the age of 4, Naya Rivera was already starring in a CBS comedy. But it was her role as Santana Lopez on Glee that carved her name into pop culture forever. Beautiful, talented, unforgettable. Yet behind the fame and laughter waited a horrifying end. July 8, 2020, Lake Piru, California. Naya took her 4-year-old son Josie out for a quiet day on the water. A rented pontoon boat. Blue skies, calm waves. At first, everything seemed perfect. But Lake Piru is no ordinary lake. Beneath the surface, swirling currents, sudden drops, a darkness that has pulled down many before. At some point, Naya and Josie slipped into the water. The current caught them, merciless, invisible hands dragging them down. Naya fought. She clawed through the waves, lungs burning, muscles tearing. She shoved her son upward, pushing him toward the boat with every ounce of strength she had left. Her body was failing, but her will to save her son was stronger. Josie made it back. He climbed onto the deck. Naya didn't. The water swallowed her whole. Her body thrashed, then went still. The lake closed over her head, erasing her from sight. When rescuers finally found Josie, he was alone on the drifting boat, confused, trembling. Later, he told his father something chilling. He felt guilty. Guilty because he didn't throw her the rope. Why? Because on that rope was a giant spider. A mother's final act was saving her child. And that child will grow up haunted, believing a spider kept him from saving her back. Naya Rivera's last moments weren't just tragic. They were cruel, cinematic in their horror. A star who gave everything to her son. Brandon Lee was born into a legacy that was impossible to ignore. The son of Bruce Lee, the most iconic martial artist of all time, Brandon grew up under the shadow of greatness, and he was just beginning to carve out his own place in Hollywood when tragedy struck in the most brutal and ironic way imaginable. Bruce himself had died young, just 32 years old in 1973. The official cause, cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, supposedly triggered by an allergic reaction to painkillers. But the mystery never went away. Rumors swirled for decades: heat stroke, foul play, even assassination. His death left a stain of unanswered questions that would only darken 20 years later. Because Brandon's story ended eerily similar, on a film set, with death waiting where the cameras rolled. Brandon had proven himself with the action flick Rapid Fire, but his real breakthrough came when he was cast in The Crow. It was the role of a lifetime, a rock musician who rises from the grave to avenge his own murder and the murder of his fiancée. A gothic revenge tale, drenched in violence, blood, and tragedy. But no one could have imagined how horrifyingly prophetic it would become. On March 31st, 1993, Brandon was filming the pivotal scene, his character's brutal death by gunfire. The set was tense, but routine. The gun was supposed to fire blanks, harmless noise for the camera, but through a chain of careless mistakes, fragments of a real bullet had been left lodged in the barrel. When the trigger was pulled, it wasn't a performance anymore, it was real. The shot tore through Brandon's abdomen, ripping into his organs. He collapsed instantly, blood pouring across the set as cameras kept rolling, capturing the moment life drained out of him. Crew members screamed, chaos erupted, but the damage was done. Brandon Lee was rushed to the hospital, but after hours of desperate surgery, he was pronounced dead, just 28 years old. The role that was supposed to make him a star became his tombstone. The remaining scenes were patched together with a stunt double and early CGI. The Crow was released anyway, haunting, violent, and unforgettable. The film became a cult classic, cementing Brandon's legacy, but also branding it forever with tragedy. Like his father before him, Brandon Lee became more than an actor. He became a ghost, a symbol of talent stolen too soon, a man who played death on screen, only to be claimed by it in real life. Sharon Tate was more than just beautiful. She was radiant, magnetic, a Texas beauty queen who had transformed into a rising Hollywood star. Roles in the Beverly Hillbillies, films like Valley of the Dolls, and even a Golden Globe nomination proved she had both the looks and the talent to make it big. By the late 1960s, she was glowing, married to director Roman Polanski, 8 months pregnant with their first child. Her future seemed limitless. But while Sharon's world was filled with hope, just beyond the glitter of Hollywood, Charles Manson and his so-called family were plotting something grotesque. On the night of August 9, 1969, Sharon and her friends, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski, were gathered in her Benedict Canyon home. Polanski was away in Europe, leaving Sharon to host in the quiet comfort of her house. That comfort didn't last. In the shadows, Manson's followers broke in. What happened next was pure nightmare. They weren't there to rob or to threaten. They were there to butcher. The killers unleashed hell inside the home. Sharon, desperate and terrified, begged for the life of her unborn baby. Her screams echoed through the house, but mercy never came. Tex Watson and Susan Atkins drove their knives into her body again and again, 16 times in total. 16 deep wounds, each one tearing away the future of a young mother and her child. Her friends were slaughtered too, beaten, shot, stabbed. The walls dripped with their blood, and as if the carnage wasn't enough, the killers smeared the word pig across the front door with a ragged hand soaked in blood, a message, a taunt, a signature of madness. The scene left behind was beyond horrific. Blood pooled on the floors, bodies twisted in agony, and a silence so heavy it felt like the house itself had died. The murders didn't stop there. The very next night, Manson's cult struck again, killing Leno and Rosemary LaBianca in the same savage fashion. Hollywood and the entire world was paralyzed with shock. Manson and his followers were eventually arrested and locked away for life, but no prison sentence could ever erase the image of that night. Sharon Tate, radiant and 8 months pregnant, cut down in the most brutal way possible. A star extinguished, a future unborn, and a legacy forever drenched in blood. On June 10, 2016, what began as a night of music and joy turned into one of the most chilling tragedies in modern pop culture. Christina Grimmie, just 22 years old, bright, talented, loved by millions after her rise on The Voice, had just finished performing in Orlando, Florida. She was radiant, laughing, taking selfies, signing autographs. Fans adored her not only for her voice, but for her kindness. But in that same crowd, one man wasn't there to celebrate. He was there to kill. Kevin James Loibl, 27. He wasn't just a fan, he was an obsessed stalker. He spent endless hours watching Christina's videos, scrolling her socials, and building a twisted fantasy where they were soulmates. and he tried to transform himself for her. LASIK eye surgery, hair implants, a crash diet. He lost more than 50 pounds. But when people told him the truth, that Christina would never be his, something inside him snapped. His obsession turned into a decision drenched in blood. Inside the venue, Loibl stood in line like everyone else. Fans ahead of him smiled, holding posters and phones. When his turn came, Christina stretched out her arms for a hug. That hug became her final gesture. 3 sudden cracks exploded through the air. At first, fans thought balloons were popping, but no, they were gunshots. Loibl shot Christina Grimmie 3 times at point-blank range. Her brother Marcus tackled the shooter, wrestling desperately, but Loibl broke free, pulled a second gun, and ended his own life on the floor. Christina collapsed. The same arms that opened for a hug now hung limp, drenched in blood. She was rushed to the hospital, but less than an hour later, she was gone. Investigators uncovered the full horror. Loibl's room was a shrine to his obsession. No friends, no relationships, just Christina. Always Christina. Forensic psychologist Chris Mohanty explained, social media, while connecting stars and fans, can also feed dangerous illusions. To a disturbed mind, every smile, every post becomes twisted proof of a relationship that never existed. Christina Grimmie's story is one of talent, kindness, and horror. She should have had decades of music ahead of her, but her life ended offering the simplest gift, a hug that welcomed the monster who took her away. Hollywood, a place where dreams shine bright, but sometimes the spotlight burns cruelly. Anton Yelchin, young, talented, rising fast, from child prodigy to blockbuster star, his charm and brilliance won over audiences everywhere. Best known as Chekhov in the Star Trek franchise, he had the world at his feet and a long future ahead. But on June 18, 2016, fate had other plans. It was a quiet morning in Los Angeles. Anton parked his Jeep Cherokee outside his home on a sloped driveway. He stepped out, walked over to check his mailbox. Nothing out of the ordinary. But behind him, his car began to move. In seconds, the 5,000-pound SUV rolled forward, gaining speed on the incline. Anton didn't notice until it was too late. The Jeep slammed into him, crushing his body against a brick pillar and the steel security gate. There was no escape. The weight of the vehicle pressed down on his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. His ribs snapped, his organs compressed. Anton was pinned, suffocating, his life draining away in silence. Cause of death, blunt, traumatic asphyxia. Even more chilling, the very Jeep that killed him had already been flagged for recall. Its gear shift was notoriously confusing. Drivers thought their cars were in park, when in reality, they were in neutral, a design flaw that had already been linked to countless rollaway incidents. Anton's family sued Fiat Chrysler, the automaker responsible. Eventually, they reached a private settlement. But no amount of money could erase the horror of his death. One moment, a star on the rise. The next, a gruesome, senseless accident. Hollywood lost a bright light that day, and fans were left asking, how could something so preventable end a life so young? December 8th, 2004. A night that was supposed to be filled with music, energy, and celebration turned into one of the darkest tragedies in rock history. On stage was Dimebag, Darrell Abbott, former guitarist of the legendary band Pantera. Widely hailed as one of the greatest guitarists of all time, Dimebag was performing with his new band, Damageplan. The crowd was electric. The riffs were heavy. The night had only just begun. But just 90 seconds into the very first song, chaos erupted. A massive man, 6'3", over 250 pounds with a shaved head, forced his way through the crowd. His name was Nathan Gale, and before anyone could react, Gale climbed onto the stage, raised a pistol, and at point-blank range, shot Dimebag Darrell in the forehead. Panic exploded. Fans screamed. Gale kept firing, killing 2 more people, and then grabbing a hostage with the gun pressed against their head. The nightmare seemed unstoppable. But before Gale could escape, a police officer on the scene fired a single shot, ending the rampage instantly. And in a chilling coincidence, this massacre took place on the very anniversary of another music tragedy, the day John Lennon was murdered by a troubled fan. But why did Nathan Gale murder Dimebag? Investigations revealed a disturbing truth. Gale, a former Marine battling severe mental health issues, blamed Dimebag for the breakup of his favorite band, Pantera. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you'd like to hear more shocking cases, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps this community alive and growing. So don't forget to hit the bell icon. See you in the next story.